What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Bootleg Football Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Coleman. And EJ, it's a dark day. I think this might be the last time we ever get to talk about Tom Brady in the offseason, preparing for one last go with the ring. I think this is it. I think this is the last year. He already retired once. I don't think he's retiring more than twice. So we're going to make this Bucs preview as good as we possibly can because I think it's the last one we're ever going to get with Tom Brady. What a squad they got. I think they're well primed for yet another run at the ring this year. But before we get to all that, everything they've done since the end of last year. First things first, EJ, buddy, how you doing? What are we drinking tonight?
I got to say, there's a sucker born every minute if you believe that.
You think he's got more than 1 year?
I think he can play as many as he wants until his deal with the devil expires. Like, he has not dropped off. We'll talk about all that, but I'm excited to talk about, the top team in this week's division, NFC South, see what they've done to reload. Had some significant losses, but also have retained plenty of talent on what was an extremely talented, I would say, a top 5 roster in the NFL in terms of depth and quality at the top, like all the way through. They've done a tremendous job of putting together a roster. They held it together. This is not a flair for Tom Brady's last year. Like, maybe we can get it done. If they stay healthy, they will absolutely be in it at the end, but we'll talk about all that. What are you drinking to get us through this last team episode of the week before we do our summary episode on Friday?
I'm on coffee because I have.
Me too. I'm on coffee every day.
I have a lot of work to do tonight. At the time of us recording this, by the way, we still haven't even started releasing these episodes. We're technically in week 2 right now, but the Jags episode has yet to come out. I have work to do on that. I have work to do on the Texans and the Colts episode. So. See, we're recording this at 9:30 at night. I'm probably not going to bed for another 5 hours or so. So yeah, I'm on that good black coffee train right now. First things first, segment we start every single show with the little 2021 recap. We have how they ended last year before we get into everything they've done since the end of last year. 13-4 record. Mm-hmm. I mean, right there at the top of the NFC. They were really, really an incredible ball club. Even better in the regular season last year than the year before when they ended up making that Super Bowl run. Finished first in the division, 7-1 at home. Tom Brady doesn't lose at home, so that's right in line with their brand. They were really, really good on the road as well. Some extremely tough games on the road that they were able to pull out. 6-3 road record. Last 5 weeks. Again, Tom Brady finishes strong. As the months get colder, he gets better. Not that it gets cold in Tampa Bay, but you get the point. 4-1 in the last 5, ended on a 3-game win streak to get themselves to 13-4. They were in that battle for the first seed the entire way. And as long as Tom Brady's your quarterback, you're always going to be in the battle for the first seed. That's just kind of what he does. Yet another incredible year for Tom. And not going to lie, I kind of feel like they're going to pick up right where they left off.
There's no reason to think that they won't. Tom Brady, like you said, does not lose at home. People say learn how to win. Tom Brady learned how to win a long time ago, and now for the last, I would say, 8 or 10 years, he's just been teaching everybody around him how to win and demanding that as well. That's the difference between elite quarterbacks and guys that go to and win multiple Super Bowls. They demand it, right? It's not, it's week 17. Doesn't matter if we win this one. Tom's like, we're not losing this game. No, I don't care. Like, Tom, we got the seed all that. Doesn't matter. We're winning this game, right? And he just drives that team along with him, drags, whatever you want to say. The great ones all do it. And this record is reflective of, yes, an incredibly talented roster, but we've seen a lot of incredibly talented rosters throughout the years in the NFL underachieve. The Tom Brady's of the world are not going to let that occur. They're going to ensure that talent is maximized, and they're going to push for every last ounce, drop, whatever, and they're going to grind for every win. They're not going to let it go. He will not spit the bit, which is why you're like, oh, one more season. I'm like, is he going to be able to give it up after that? I'm not so sure. You don't just kind of turn that drive off. It's legendary.
He made it like 40 days at home
Yeah.
with the wife and kids and was like, you know what? Fuck this.
The
I'm
best,
going to go spend 80 hours a week playing quarterback again.
the best thing I saw was he was in the school pickup line like 4 times, and he was like, nah, I'm done. It's over. You can have it. I'm back at it.
I'll retire when they're in college.
Oh, I just laugh because it hurts and it's true.
Now, he is not the only one at the top of the power structure, because let's be honest, Tom Brady is in the organizational power structure, is one of the few quarterbacks that is. But beyond that, in terms of actual front office and coaching personnel, this is still one of the more stable organizations in the NFC. Not as long in terms of tenure as the Saints that we talked about yesterday, but in terms of the core being together for 4+ years, everybody on this staff, at least at the top, has been here for at least 4 straight years. Jason Light, at general manager, has been here for 9 years at this point. Todd Bowles, year 1 at head coach, but he's been here since 2019, when Arians took over. The assistant head coach and run game coordinator, Harold Goodwin, 4 years with the team. Byron Leftwich, 4 years with the team. Run game coordinator / defensive line coach, Casey Rogers, 4 years with the team. Defensive pass game coordinator, Larry Foote. If you're a Steelers fan listening to this, guess what? Larry Foote is a defensive coordinator in the NFL now, so you better feel old. He's been there for 4 years. Special teams, Keith Armstrong, also got there with that 2019 staff. So the core of that staff, despite being a playoff team, despite winning a Super Bowl, you don't see a coaching staff stay together like that, even through all of that success, very often. That almost never happens. This one did. And, eventually it's going to break up, because I have to imagine Byron Leftwich is getting a job eventually, and, maybe one of these run game coordinators or pass game coordinators will get a full DC job eventually, but for now, it's the model of stability over there in Tampa.
Yeah, and you can thank one of the other Florida teams for that. Trent Baalke dug in his heels in Jacksonville and said, nah, I'm not leaving. And Byron Leftwich said, cool, no thanks, and ends up staying probably what we would consider well after his resume would state he's going to get a head coaching shot. So, yeah, you're right. It's coming for him. But he looked at Jacksonville and said, hey, if Trent Baalke's there, I don't really want to be there. I would rather go back and basically stay with my guys, right? Yes, there's a change at the top with Todd Bowles coming in and Bruce Arians going out, but he was pretty much handpicked and groomed for that spot. That's why he didn't get another shot, was, hey, if you stay around, if Bruce retires, we'll give you the reins. Byron said, I would rather go back and be with my guys who I've known in those capacities for 4 years. I'm very comfortable there. Tom Brady's coming back. Makes it kind of easy. We've got another good shot to be on top of our conference and look to go to another Super Bowl. So that's always attractive, and it makes it so he can be choosy. So good for him.
Now, the story that I found fascinating in terms of Arians passed down the reins to Todd after Tom was coming back, because he said, the organization's going to be more stable with Tom coming back. I'd rather give Todd a chance with a winning team. And I don't know what to believe here, because there was all these reports about friction with Bruce and Tom, and now Bruce is helping out the front office, and there was that very abrupt step down. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what's true and what's not true. It's weird. It's beyond weird. But if we're just going to avoid speculation and just talk about what the reality is right now, you have Todd Bowles, who is worthy of getting another shot at head coach. You have the greatest quarterback of all time. You have a seasoned, experienced staff that's been together for a while behind Todd Bowles. Regardless of the circumstances of how that stepping aside, replacement, however you want to word it, regardless of however that came together, it came together. And I think it at least ended up in the right spot.
Yeah, and it's not unlike the Saints, who we talked about yesterday, in terms of there is an ascension from within the ranks, but that guy's been there. It's also a DC, right? Dennis Allen was the DC, and Bowles was the DC, and the head guy left that had been there a while, and they're replaced, again, with somebody that is familiar to the rest of the staff, that knows the system. So while it's a change at the top, that's always going to be a little bit of a ripple, but it's about as small a ripple as it can be because, Todd Bowles didn't have to move his office very far to go from defensive coordinator to head coach.
Also, it helps when your assistants under the coordinators have a truly ridiculous amount of coaching experience. Like, it's got to be, 200 combined years, something like that.
Yeah, if Tampa's going to compete for the Graybeard Coaching Award, I think they win it probably going away, and they could smoke most teams with just Tom Moore and Clyde Christensen. Between the two of them, it's 62 years worth of NFL experience. Two coaches, 62 years. Tom Moore, 42 by himself. Clyde, more than 20, but 20 seasons in New England alone. So I think he's actually up to 22 NFL seasons. It's a ridiculously big staff. They have 23 coaches besides the 6 we've already named in the top power structure. So there's 29 coaches on the Bucs, and that does include strength and conditioning and whatever else. But that is the biggest number we've come across so far. Also experienced up, down, and sideways from the coaching ranks, from former players. If there's experience in any fashion, you can find it on the Bucs staff. So we'll start with Tom Moore. He is assistant coach. That is his full title. 42 NFL seasons, as we said. Spent 13 seasons coaching Peyton Manning. You wanted me to tell the Tom Moore Peyton Manning story, which was when he was with the Colts. A reporter said, I see you don't run a lot of plays without 18 back there. 18, famously Peyton Manning's number. Tom Moore looked him square in the eye and said, because if 18 goes down, we're fucked, and we don't practice fucked. And I have a feeling it's the same with
every time.
I know, and I have a feeling it's the same with 12 in Tampa, right? Yeah. That there's probably not a lot of reps going to Byron Leftwich or Kyle Trask or anybody else for that matter. And if somebody says the same thing to Tom Moore, he's probably going to say the same thing right back. And Clyde Christensen,
they better not
too.
be giving reps to Byron Leftwich, because then something really went wrong.
Oh, jeez. Kyle Trask, Blaine Gabbert, and I said Byron Leftwich. Boy, and I'm not even drinking. This is just seltzer. This is what happens when you stack episodes. But Clyde Christensen, speaking of, would say the same thing about Tom Brady, because he did spend 20 years in New England with Brady. And sure enough, Brady comes along, and strangely enough, Christensen follows him to his next destination. So Tom likes him. If Tom didn't like him, he wouldn't have lasted that long in New England, and he certainly wouldn't come to Tampa Bay. So Todd McNair is the running back coach. He played 8 years in the NFL with the Chiefs and the Oilers. Been a coach for a long time as well. Chris Boniol is the specialist coach. Yes, you might remember that name from being the Cowboys kicker several eons ago. And then Thaddeus Lewis. Here's one that I thought was fascinating because his journey around the NFL was really interesting. Spent parts of 8 seasons in the NFL with 8 different teams.
Mm-hmm.
So his overall career stats are sort of underwhelming, but think about how much he picked up going to 8 different stops. Imagine if you went to 8 different grade schools or middle schools, right? By the time you got to 8th grade, you'd been to 8 different schools. You would have learned a lot about schools in general and teachers, and Thaddeus Lewis probably picked up something at every stop. He's coaching wide receivers for them, even though he's a former quarterback, and I always love that combination because you see it from a different perspective and can bring that to your receivers. So really experienced and diverse and varied staff in terms of experience, age, players, coaches on the offensive side. On the defensive side, I wanted to bring up Lori Lowe Locust, known as Coach Lowe, to the Tampa Bay faithful, assistant defensive line coach, but does most of the sort of day-to-day stuff because, again, the head defensive line coach is the co-defensive coordinator, so has other responsibilities. The defensive line unit in Tampa is notable, so led the NFL against the run for the 2nd consecutive season, limiting opponents to 80.6 rushing yards per game and 3.6 yards per carry in the regular season. Coach Lowe can coach.
Mm-hmm.
She is an exceptionally good coach. Bruce Arians picked her from a different league, brought her notably to be one of the most high-powered female coaches in the NFL, and she coaches. Yes, she has had a lot of talent to work with. Again, Jason Light's done a very good job of bringing those players to Tampa Bay. Coach Lowe has honed them into a unit that leads the NFL. Very, very solid coach. Kevin Ross is the cornerbacks coach. Yes, that Kevin Ross, 14-year NFL playing career, 2-time Pro Bowler. Played in Kansas City, Atlanta, and San Diego. I can say San Diego because that's actually where he played, and I'm not wrong.
It's going to fuck you up for the next 3 months, too.
It'll fuck me up forever. I will never not do that wrong. I will always do that wrong. And Keith Tandy, his title, defensive/special teams assistant. 7-year NFL career as a safety with Tampa Bay and Atlanta. So again, coming home to coach, forged relationships while he was there, got an opportunity to come back and coach. So just the full gamut of some of the most experienced coaches overall in the NFL, players from all different sides of the ball, all different positions, coming together with some, I will say, unique titles. Tampa has some titles I haven't seen elsewhere in other NFL coaching power structures, but a huge staff, one of the most experienced and certainly one of the most tenured throughout the league, and you see that play out on the field. This is a very prepared team.
Do you know where they picked, kind of random note, you know where they picked Thad Lewis up from as a coach? Like where he was before Tampa?
I don't remember.
He was at UCLA under Chip Kelly as an offensive analyst, because his last couple of years in the league, he played for Chip in Philly, and then the following year in San Francisco, Chip really liked him. You know, obviously Thad was never going to be like a starter in the league, but
sure.
You know, Chip really, really liked him, and so when then Chip got the UCLA job, Thad was out of the league. Thad ended up being just an analyst for them. Just, you know, analyst typically just equates to problem solver.
Yeah, come learn.
You know, did well for them. You know, I don't know if Chip had any sort of relationship with Bruce Arians, or if Bruce Arians just was like, hey, he's working out well, let's just go get him, but ended up getting his first shot at coaching in the NFL, stuck around since then. Love to see it. Love to see a journeyman player kind of get his second shot in the league by being a coach now. So we love to see stories like that. That's kind of the reason why we dive into those notable coaches every single day is we like to kind of highlight names that you definitely know of but don't track. You know, the Larry Foots and the Thad Lewises of the world. Getting into free agency losses, we're going to structure this one a little bit differently than we do for most teams, because I want to talk about the guys they lost and the guys they re-signed at the same time. Because the guys they lost, for the most part, older veterans, I mean, most of them aren't even on teams right now. Either they're retired. In the case of Gronk, we're recording this literally on the day Gronk retired, so he's out. You know, Richard Sherman's in media now, and Ndamukong Suh is like floating that he's going to be a Raider. Maybe he will be by the time this comes out, but as of right now, he's a free agent. JPP's a free agent. You know, OJ Howard signed for like $3.5 million in Buffalo. Jordan Whitehead was a hitter and a presence and a locker room guy. I'm not going to say he was a minor loss. He was a loss, but he wasn't like a major loss. The only like real big kind of like, man, that one kind of hurts is Alex Kappa. But when you look at the group that they retained, because they had to make some hard decisions, they retained Carlton Davis, they retained Leonard Fournette, they retained Golston, they retained Brait, knowing probably that Gronk was gone, and their other viable starting tight end is a rookie, so yeah, you need a veteran. They retained Ryan Jensen. That's the biggie. If you have to choose between Kappa and Jensen, you're going Jensen. And they retained Chris Godwin in a receiver market that has since exploded. On the whole, the retentions to me, with limited money, outweigh the admittedly great talent that is no longer in the building.
I don't disagree. The only point I would quibble on is Jordan Whitehead. I think Jordan Whitehead, for folks that follow Tampa Bay, is going to be the one that stings. He was low-key, very good, very impactful player for them. Made one of those guys that makes plays every game, but just never seems to get the same shine as some of his secondary mates. Certainly the third or fourth most famous Bucs secondary player pretty easily. But if you ask the Tampa Bay faithful, like, who made, the most plays, he's not going to be fourth or fifth on that list. He's going to be second or third on that list. And him going to the Jets, I thought that was a great get by the Jets. I think semi-low key, maybe medium key. The Bucs will miss him a little bit. But in terms of the retentions, yeah, we've talked about this before. If you're going to choose between a center and a guard, and
keep the center.
You keep the center, and especially if that center is Ryan Jensen. So our buddy Brandon Thorne, who does very deep and extensive offensive line study, loves Jensen to the point where I think he's watched every Jensen snap for the last 5 years, like every single Jensen snap for the last 5 years, because he started off doing some and then he did more, and then he was like, no, I'm going full boat. I'm going to watch every snap that he's played. He's a huge Ryan Jensen fan, with good reason. Ryan Jensen is a tone setter. That's why Tom Brady likes him. That's why opponents hate him. Ryan Jensen, one of the most hated offensive linemen in the league, because he's never going to give you an easy day and he's never going to give you a playoff. Like, he's going to come after you every time. So it's interesting that they kept Brate, they let Howard go. There were probably thoughts about Gronk, but this has been one of the 2 deepest tight end rooms in the league, along with Cleveland. And now Howard leaves in free agency, never really took off in Tampa Bay. You kept Brate, but you lose Gronk, and now it's Brate and one of the rookies we'll talk about, Cade Otton from Washington. But overall, you're sort of reading all those names off. You get to the bottom and you're like, wow, man, they lost everybody. And then you get Carlton Davis, Leonard Fournette, Golston, Brate, Jensen, and Godwin. And you're like, oh, those are the guys they wanted. That's where all the money went.
And Perriman, and, I guess we can...
There's one more.
We can preface this one, the next name, I should say, Blaine Gabbert.
Yep.
That one's important, but for
totally
a different kind of reason. And reason is it's important because that's like, oh shit, we probably shouldn't have Kyle Trask as our backup quarterback. Like, they retained Blaine Gabbert knowing that they couldn't not retain Blaine Gabbert.
We talked about this before the show, and I said, I'm going to bring up Blaine Gabbert's signing, not because it's super impactful financially. It's $2.2 million, but it's a signal, right? It's a flag. It's Tampa Bay holding up the flag on Kyle Trask, because there's no way you pay Blaine Gabbert any money if you think Kyle Trask can, pull the sled. And they were like, hey, Blaine, 2.2, come back up Tom again. You're probably not going to have to play, but we really low-key need you. We don't want you going anywhere, because that guy we picked up, we're not so sure that he can pull the sled if he needs to. That is what that signals, even though it is a low money, and, people will sort of just skip over that in the transactions page and be like, that's not a big deal. It's a big deal because of their pick of Kyle Trask.
And they signed him back in April, by the way. This was not this was not like they did the deal at the end of the season to tack on one more year. Like, they basically got to when their draft prep was done and they saw that the quarterback class was not very great, so they weren't going to be able to kind of re-roll the dice on a day 2 quarterback and introduce competition to Trask that way. Like, their only option was bringing back Gabbert, and they decided, like, yeah, we need to bring back Gabbert. So
we're gonna do it. Yep.
It's not a death nail for Trask, but it is a signal, in my opinion, of how the organization feels about him.
Yeah, it's not
especially great. Since they also came out and said that Trask or that Gabbert's the backup and not Trask
already.
Yeah,
and probably number 3 is Byron Leftwich, and yes, I used that name correctly. We'll talk about a possibility for number 3 that I think has a chance, but yeah, it is not a good sign. Like, if Kyle Trask was developing and moving along, there is no way they bring back Blaine Gabbert.
Now, in terms of additions from third-party teams, I did mention that Sue is no longer there, and it at least as of today sounds like there's no chance of him coming back. They did replace him with possibly the best possible guy to replace Ndamukong Suh, and I would even argue that this might even be an upgrade at this point in their careers, and that's Akeem Hicks. Got him for $8 million from Chicago. Bears extraordinaire. Talk about former players that are going to end up as coaches. I almost guarantee you Akeem Hicks is going to end up as a coach. He's a coach on the field. I think he'd be a phenomenal defensive line coach. He's a great technician, great locker room leader, tons of power, positional flexibility, play him all over the line. He's going to be a phenomenal get for them and probably play a significant number of snaps. Keanu Neal, who flirted a little bit with linebacker, sounds like he's going back to safety, probably to fill the Jordan Whitehead smack the shit out of people role, because that's what Keanu Neal did when he was at safety, was smack the shit out of people. So I imagine that's what he's going to be doing in Tampa. Russell Gage, they pried him away from Atlanta to presumably be their number 3, I would imagine, for $10 million. He's probably number 3. Logan Ryan, got him another safety from the Giants to be their 3rd safety, probably. And then Shaq Mason, they traded for Shaq Mason after losing Kappa for a 5th round pick. Can you imagine? Okay, you're going through the short panic mode of, oh God, we lost Kappa. How do we fill this hole? We only have a limited number of picks. How do we do this? And then you somehow give up a middle day 3 pick for a top 5 guard? How does that work? I don't know how they got away with it, but they did. Might be the best trade any team made the entire offseason.
Yeah, we need to remind ourselves of this or re-aggravate ourselves about this because it's so lopsided. Like, it's so wildly lopsided. Oh, little sighting. It's so wildly lopsided.
9 episodes without the cat coming on camera.
That's okay. Little needs a little love. It's okay.
Oh, God.
So, Shaq Mason, the talent disparity for the compensation disparity, like, it's even greater than the one I typically bring up, which was the other 5th round pick, which is Amari Cooper, right? You get Amari Cooper for a 5th. Like, forget Amari Cooper. Shaq Mason is a better player at his position than Amari Cooper is at his, and I don't say that lightly. Like, Shaq Mason is a really, really good player, and you get him for a 5th, it almost brings out the conspiracy theorist in me. Like, Tom was like, okay, Bill, you owe me. Give me a guard. You don't want to see me get killed. Like, give Shaq Mason up for something that Jason will give you. And they're like, a 5th? And he's like, oh, okay. Like, there's just no rationale. I don't think that occurred, but there's just no rational explanation for Shaq Mason for a 5th. Like, there's something we don't know there. It just doesn't add up on the outside.
It's a gift. That's literally all it is. It's a gift.
It's got to be.
And they'll take it. They'll 100% take it.
For sure. And Russell Gage, $10 million. I looked at the depth chart. You know, a lot of people will be singing Scotty Miller's praises, and rightfully so, but I think he's a better 4th, and I don't say that poorly. Like, I think he's a really good 4th to have, but Gage gives you more as a consistent 3rd, plus they paid him $10 million. I was thinking Russell Gage was going to be a good sort of bargain signing in this wide receiver market, and they paid him $10 million kind of early, and I was like, oh, they liked him even more than I did. I don't know that I would have gone that high that early, but, you know, had very good results in Atlanta. And I think Keanu Neal is going to be their sort of, I think he's still going to go back and forth. He's going to play safety, but I think more 3rd safety in terms of the role. And I really think Logan Ryan is going to play the sort of 2nd safety, playing back, right, next to Antoine Winfield Jr. Ryan's going to get a lot of snaps. He got a ton of snaps for the Giants, 85% of their defensive snaps. I think he's going to be the guy that's always on the field. Keanu Neal's going to rotate in certain situations where they kind of want to play heavy, but maybe they need a guy with a little bit more range, you know.
I have a conspiracy theory that maybe he's going to be dimebacker and Devin White comes off. Ooh. Which sounds crazy, I know, because it's Devin White. And he's such a good blitzer. But Devin White in coverage is a lot different than Devin White rushing the quarterback. His value on 3rd downs is rushing the quarterback. He's gotten better as his career has gone on, but he's never been great in coverage, which is weird considering his athleticism. But it's just always been kind of a blind spot. Like, great against the run, phenomenal against the run outside the tackles. Like, he's chased stuff down like crazy out in the edges. Coverage has always been very hit or miss. But Keanu Neal, as a dime backer, it wouldn't be often. It might be kind of game plan specific, but third safety / dime backer, I could see that happen, and I really could.
Yeah, you got to the dime backer part, and I was like, why is this a conspiracy theory? And then it's like, because blank will come off. And I was like,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
No, Bucs fans are going to be like, oh, no, Devin White's never coming off the field. Just wait for it. I think it's going to happen.
If you look at his advanced statistics, I'd take that bet. I did a pretty good workup on the top, I think it was 8 inside linebackers a couple of years ago, trying to figure out like who the actual Pro Bowl snubs really were, because fans really get behind inside linebackers of their team. And if you're ever going to say somebody who's a snub or underrated, they tend to hook on to inside linebacker more than some other positions. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna take a fairly deep dive. And I took 3-4 days, pulled up all the stats I could, both run stop, passing, efficiency metrics, and everything else. And Devin he's a tale of two cities.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
His run metrics are stunning. Like he's top 4 or 5, and we're talking about the top 6 in the league, and there's pretty much 2 per team. So you're talking about out of 60 guys, he's top 6. That's not faint praise. He's really, really good. And you're talking about guys like Fred Warner as better than him. Like, yeah, okay. But you get to the pass statistics, and I only went like 8 deep because, again, I was really looking at kind of like all pro nods, which is, they only give 2. So I really just wanted to kind of include everybody that might have a shot at that. And when it got to the pass statistics side of the table, he was consistently second to last or dead last by a bunch. Like there was a gap. And so good against the run, not great against the pass, and had given up, many yards, high completion percentage, bunch of touchdowns. Like it was, the statistics were not pretty against the pass.
Turn into the draft now. They did acquit themselves pretty well in terms of, of the key players they lost, whether it's due to retirement or cutting or trading, anything like that. Of all the guys they lost, they did a pretty good job of kind of filling in the gaps in the draft. I'll go through it one by one here. They did not have a first-round pick, but they did at pick 33 have Logan Hall from Houston. Obscene power, but he really, I'm going to be diplomatic, very high ceiling. He really only does one thing right now, and that's power. If he's just going forward in a straight line, he's awesome. He has to learn to do all the other stuff off of that. He needs to get not just an inside counter, but an outside counter. He needs to, incorporate, counter moves off of that long arm move, because people are going to forklift him. So he needs to know how to react to that and then be able to kind of refit and re-engage. If somebody forks his arm off of a one arm stab, he just kind of like stops. So he's got a lot to learn. Who better to learn from than Akeem Hicks? I think that's going to be amazing for his career, and his upside is amazing. So I think that was probably appropriate value considering the upside, but he does have a long way to go to realize that upside. Luke Gadecki from Central Michigan was their other second-round pick at tackle. Getting some tackle depth is probably good for them at this point, because their starters, in terms of looking at Donovan Smith and Tristan Wirfs, is about as good as it gets. But if one of them went down, you're staring down the barrel of Josh Wells, being a starting tackle for you. For a quarterback that can't move, that's not adequate. You need to be too deep on the offensive line. So they went with a swing tackle in the second round, which is great. Round 3, this is really where it got spicy. Rachaad White, one of my favorite running backs in this entire class. I think he's going to be an immediate contributor for them, going to catch a lot of passes. He's a great complement to what Leonard Fournette does. I think in terms of kind of being the slash and bash, Rachaad White's the slash and Leonard Fournette's the bash. He's going to get a bunch of touches. I really do think that. And I think he's going to be better than Rojo was for them. Not that Rojo was like terrible towards the end, but Rachaad White is an upgrade to me. And this is the next one. Cade Otton. Gronk retired. People are panicking. Oh my God, who's going to be the Y tight end? They were the most efficient running team in the entire league out of 11 personnel because they had Gronk, who could block his ass off. He's like a sixth offensive lineman. What are they going to do? They're going to play Cade Otton, who, by the way, is also really big and is your classic Y tight end and is a great blocker and can run the Gronk route tree of like, hey, I'm bigger than you. I'm going to run a slant and Tom's going to throw it up high. I'm going to box you out. Cade Otton does all that stuff. Like, he has a very Gronkian type skill set. He's not Gronk, but in terms of the mold, it's not that far off. He really does play that role. So I'm not worried about it. And then Jake Camarda, the punter from Georgia, had a lot of fans. This was, I think, the second punter taken, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, it was early. That was the thing that really stood out about that particular pick for me is like, whoa, you're picking a punter in the fourth. Okay.
A punter who wasn't Ryan Stonehouse, by the way, which pissed me off.
Wasn't Jordan Stout. Wasn't Ryan Stonehouse. Like, there, wasn't Punt God. We've talked about punters more than we ever have this particular draft cycle, and to go get Camarda in middle late round 4 is like, okay. Like, you could have waited. There's a lot of other punters, but again, they've got their commitment and they think it's important, and they obviously really liked him. That's a much higher pick than most teams would spend on a specialist.
He had a lot of fans in punting Twitter. I'll leave it at that. Zion McCollum, the next round, hyper athletic corner prospect. They love him big and fast in Tampa. Like, they have a mold, and it's just giant athletes. He fits that profile. Again, not ready to start, but they have a great coaching staff that I think is going to be able to mold him, because that's what they've done, is mold day 2 and day 3 corners that are more athlete than corner at the moment, and they get him into starting quality. So they're going to do it again with him. Keefe, I think it's how you pronounce it, right? The tight end from Minnesota. I did not get to watch him, to be perfectly honest, but I did watch Andre Anthony, the defensive end at LSU. I had a UDFA grade on him. He ended up going like pick 248. So yeah, whatever.
Real close.
Tomato, same thing.
Real close. Interesting draft class, top to bottom. Logan Hall was my biggest sigh of relief. I was very glad that the Bucs picked him, because there was some talk that Chicago might, and I really didn't want that, because I thought they had much bigger needs, quite frankly, not because I was anti-Logan Hall. He also had one of the biggest swings of any player I watched from the first game of the season that Houston played to the last game. The last game against Cincinnati. If you want to get excited, if you're a Tampa Bay Buc fan, and you're like, what did we get in Logan Hall? Go watch the champ game against Cincinnati. Right? Go watch that game. That is his preeminent game from last year against a high-quality opponent, and he looks like he's got a lot going on. If you watch the first game of the season that he played, you'll say, what did we do? And again, you want to see that kind of progression out of a player, but I'm with you. He needs to keep going. He doesn't have enough to be consistently successful at the NFL level if he just stopped right here, if he just leveled off and you said that's what you're getting. It wouldn't be a great pick at 33 overall. They looked at that progression throughout the year and said, with our defensive line staff, we believe we can keep that arrow pointing in that direction, keep adding skills to what is a very capable frame. That's what they're betting on with Logan Hall. Godeke was like, you needed a tackle. A lot of tackles already went. There's some thought that he might be a guard. For them, he's definitely a tackle, right? Because of the depth you talked about, right? That's just where he fits in their system, and they believe he's a tackle, or they probably wouldn't have taken him middle second round. So I don't know. Let's trust the staff on that one. They have a very experienced offensive line staff. They have a very good offensive line, and they've done great with the rookies they've gotten in. High, low picks, doesn't matter. They've developed them. So going to give them a little bit of grace on the Godeke pick. Rachaad White, balance. He is a modern and balanced running back. He is as good catching the ball as he is running the ball, and that's not backhanded praise in either category. He can do both things really well I would say an equal balance, and that's what you need in the modern NFL. You need a back that can do both. That's why they picked up Rojo. They thought he was going to be able to do some more of that. They've been chasing that. They brought in Gio Bernard to sort of fill up. They got the Vandy running back. Just hasn't worked out for him. Rachaad White should fill that role in the offense of, hey, you want to throw, Tom wants to throw a screen pass, A, he's going to catch it, and B, can do something with it consistently. Very, very smooth player, pass or run. Just so smooth. Tends to be a little bit more upright, taller, but smooth. So great get for them. K. Dotton, wildly excited about him, was even before the Gronk retirement, but after the Gronk retirement. He's my TE5, right at the top of tier 2 for me. Thought he was better than some names that were a little bit bigger or more popular. Great blocker. If you want to see him blocking, go watch him against Oregon, Kayvon Thibodeau and the like. He had some very good, solid reps against those guys, very sound as a blocker, but I think gives a little bit more in the pass game than some of the other players. His stats don't show that, but if you watch what he does with the reps he got, because Washington didn't throw to the tight ends a lot, I think there's more there. I think that's going to be sort of an untapped piece that comes out in Tampa. I think he might end up being a guy that Tom really likes. Tom, pretty good with dealing with athletic tight ends over his career. He's got a pretty good history there.
Every once in a while, though, Otten would have one of those games where it's like 8 catches, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like, he did take over a couple games. They just didn't throw it to him all the time like that.
And those were sprinkled in, and they gave you this sort of, I don't want to say false hope, but it got your hopes up, and you're like, man, he can do that all the time. Why aren't you leveraging that? And it's there. Like, the skill and the results, the production are there, and it's not accidental. It's not like somebody fell down in coverage and he went 60 yards. He's a very smooth receiver. There's a great rep where he catches it out near the boundary. He's behind the line of scrimmage when he catches it, and he's got this great little, one-step sort of half pirouette sidestep move where he catches the ball, basically moves his hip, dodges the guy, and then makes another move to the outside, which is a very thin slice at that point. Ends up picking up like 6 yards on what should have been a probably 2-yard loss based on where and how he caught the ball or where it was located. Just little bits of athleticism sprinkled throughout his tape like that. It's like, man, he could do more than they made him do in the passing game. So I'm really excited about K. Dotton. Zion McCollum, big and fast, but also skilled. Like, we were all over Tariq Woolen as big and fast, but learning. Zion McCollum is almost as big, just about as fast, and more skilled, farther along in that skill development curve. So goes again to a very good landing spot in Tampa where he can continue to develop. O'Keefe, low-key, is going to be like their third or fourth tight end. He's going to make the roster. Played for PJ Fleck at Minnesota.
Looking at the current depth chart, he better.
No, he's going to, even as you're talking about a 6th-round pick, 218 overall. Not a lot of people know O'Keefe's name. Low-key good player. I think he makes it there. And Andre Anthony, I didn't get a chance to watch. You did. You had a UDFA grade on him. But, this is what Jason Light does. He grabs talent that fits and can be developed by the coaches and the system they have, within the system they have. And down the road, they play a role. I could see a role for all of these guys all the way down to the bottom pick, 248. That's not often. Like, I know the front office can always see those roles or they wouldn't have picked them, but I think it's clear line with Jason Light's picks.
UDFA, lots to talk about here. I know you have your favorites. I'm going to let you lead this one.
Yeah, I'm going to lead off with Akil Glass because he's a quarterback from Alabama A&M, HBCU. One of the best quarterbacks from any HBCU school this year, starting a couple of their bowls. If you can find me a futures bet that Akil Glass has a better chance to be on this roster longer than Kyle Trask, I would take it.
Whoa.
I know. Super spicy considering where they picked him.
I don't think you'll ever get odds on that, but they
No,
would be
I never
long.
would. I never would, which is, hey, I might as well offer it up. I like Akil Glass's skill set. Does he need to continue to develop? Yes. Does he have, I think, a greater skill set out of the box than Kyle Trask? Yeah. He played at a much less high-profile place, Alabama A&M, not Florida by any stretch of the imagination. Does he have more skill just out of the box? I would say he does. Does he have a long way to go, just like Kyle Trask did? He does, but I'm going to take the guy that's got, I think, arguably more skills to be my third developmental quarterback. Because, again, Gabbert's the solid number 2. They're not messing around with that. Tom Brady's not getting pushed by anybody anytime soon. If I got to stash a guy on the practice squad as my third developmental QB and you say it can be Kyle Trask or Akil Glass, I'm going to roll the dice on Glass. And is it a roll the dice? It is, but that would be my pick. So another one, Jareth Stearns, the tiny little wideout that was hyper productive at Western Kentucky. One of those guys, we saw him at Shrine, and you go, nah, he's like 5'7", 5'8". He's never going to make it. Like, it's just not going to happen. It was a college thing, right? It's a system thing. And then you watch him, and you're like, I bet he makes a roster. Like, it might be a practice squad, but it might not be a 53, might not be the active roster. He was productive for a reason. It wasn't just his quarterback. It wasn't just the system. He's a good receiver. So, again, do you spend a draft pick on that guy? I don't know that I would have. Do I happily snap him up in UDFA and give him a chance? You bet.
Absolutely.
That's what it's for. This one's fun. So, Olakunle Fatukasi. And yes, he is the little brother of Fola Fatukasi, linebacker from Rutgers.
Not as big.
Not as big. A little bit faster, I hope. But again, special teams type that's going to come in, be a backup in a very good linebacking room if he makes the team. Good bloodlines. His brother, was a Jet, is now a Jaguar. We've already talked about him. So just one of those. Keep an eye on it. Like, do I have any high hopes for him? Not necessarily, but got a chance to make it for sure. And then Kyler McMichael, they have him listed as a corner from North Carolina. A lot of people thought he might be safety. This is another guy that we got to see up close all week at Shrine. Low-key made a ton of plays. Not very many people got one over against Kyler McMichael. I was sure, 100% sure, I would have put $50 on the fact he was getting drafted, especially after the way he played at Shrine. His tape was good, too, from North Carolina, but didn't end up getting drafted, just falls into the Bucs. It's just Bucs, secondary, the rich getting richer. Very talented guy, good size, very solid. No idea why he didn't get drafted. Can play corner or safety. Has that positional versatility. Like, great get for Jason Light.
I think he's going to be a safety because if he's a corner, he is the most square-built corner I've ever seen in my life. Like, he is just a sentient square.
Think about Carlton Davis, right? You look at Carlton Davis, and he looks like a big hitting safety. He's a corner for them. Again, you said they like him big, they like him fast. Like, fits to type. They're just drafting guys and picking up guys on type.
It's that he's wide. Like you watch him up close, like he is wide as a corner. Like, doesn't sacrifice fluidity or anything like that. It's like, God damn, dude, you hit the weight room every day.
When you line him up against guys like Tyquan Thornton,
you kind of need it,
whose calves look like this, right? And then McMichael's on the other side. Yeah, he looks like he's cut out of a block. I really liked his game. He was one of the guys that I was just like, I came away from that week going, man, he's really good. Nobody's talking about him, and he's really good. Like, it's not like, oh, he's got an outside chance. Again, I was sure he was going to get drafted, so great pickup by Tampa.
Now, team floor, team ceiling, our favorite segment to close this out. This is going to be, in terms of win total, what's their ceiling, what's their floor. We each have our own ideas. They're relatively similar here in that we both think that they're going to be right in contention for the first seed, as all Tom Brady teams are. I have maybe the highest win floor that I'm going to end up having throughout this entire series, and that's 10. Because Tom Brady has literally not won less than 10 games. He's not won single-digit games in, I kid you not, 2 decades. Like, it just doesn't happen. 2002 was the last time he won 9 or fewer games. So, 10-win floor until proven otherwise. In terms of win ceiling, you could argue 14. I just looking at their schedule, they got some really rough games. And the Saints are still in the division, and the Saints, for whatever reason, just absolutely dominate them. So I'm going to go with 13 to be safe. But, yeah, they're making the playoffs. Like, this is, if there was anybody that you had to bet your life on they're going to be playing January football, it's this team.
Don't disagree at all. I'm going to venture a little higher and a little lower. 14 wins is the ceiling. I think they can do it. Tom is preternaturally competitive. Like, if you had a competitive scale, he'd just bust it. He's going to want to win more. He's going to want to set him up in better position. Again, he's not going to give away any games. And the talent that they have retained around him, it's not like they have holes in the offensive line. They are, arguably just as good. They kept Jensen. They got Shaq Mason. That, if anything, that's an upgrade. The receiving core is Hall of Fame worthy, and that's not a stretch. Like, Mike Evans is a Hall of Famer. If you don't believe Mike Evans is a Hall of Famer, you need to recalibrate the way you look at Hall of Fame wide receivers, because his resume screams Hall of Fame right now if he retired. Godwin, not yet, but was, when healthy, the straw that stirred their drink. He was the guy, even with Mike Evans in that lineup, that they went to first. He was their alpha. He's back. Russell Gage, we've already said we like. They bring back Fournette, who Tom's obviously very comfortable with and caught more balls than we all thought was physically possible. And you add a guy like Rachaad White to add some more flair and flavor to that position. Tight end, you don't have Gronk. And yes, that is a safety blanket gone. I'm going to say don't have Gronk right now, because it seems like Tom Brady just blows the horn and Gronk comes back, even if it's for the late run, and looks like he never left. And would I be surprised if he did it again? I wouldn't be at all surprised.
Do I think call him up in December, say, hey, bud, you got 5 games in you. Let's go.
Let's go. You want another ring? So it is a thing, but Cameron Brate was, good tight end before Gronk got there. Is he great? No. And like I said, I kind of low-key like Cade Otton as a rookie. Big contributor? No. But you got so many mouths to feed on that offense that he doesn't have to be a big contributor. He can go out and get, 20 catches on the year, and it would be a great rookie debut. So it just feels like they're going to just keep their foot down. They won 13 last year. Tom's going to want to win 14 or 15 or 17 this year. That's just the way he is. I'm going to say if everything goes their way, 14 is the ceiling, and my floor is 9, and that is if everything goes the other way. And that's Tom hits his thumb on a helmet, misses 5 games. I think Blaine Gabbert probably comes in and wins 2 of those, just because the team, as we've said, is very deep and very talented. But, Tom would have won 4 of those 5, and Blaine wins 2. And if that's the case, 9 wins is the wheels just fell off. But other than that, way too talented. And, if you're really going to press me, I'll say double digits is way more likely, just historically. But something terrible would have to happen, and that's what a floor is. I still think it's 9, which could still get them into the playoffs. Not likely, but
I think it still would. I mean, the NFC is
weaker than the NFC.
Ever weaker. I mean, Russ is out of the conference. I mean, Who knows what happens with Trey Lance? Devontae's gone.
Yeah,
Bears are still weak.
If I had to throw money at this, I would be throwing a lot more money towards 14 than I would towards 9. Like, the needle is like way over for double digits, making the playoffs, being a first seed. Like, yeah, that's where my head's at with the Bucs.
Well, that'll wrap it up for the individual team episodes for the NFC South. Remember, tomorrow we have kind of the macro look at the division in terms of picking the award winners for the division, MVP, Offensive, Defensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, all that kind of stuff. We're picking all that for the NFC South tomorrow. And then the following week, I think we're doing AFC East, if I recall correctly.
That is correct.
We are 2 weeks down, almost, out of 8 consecutive weeks. We're a quarter of the way there. Thank you for sticking with us so far. Hope you come back tomorrow for the macro look at the division. And until then, later.
Take care.